法律学院欧洲联合法律研究中心、中国文教基金会共同主办，并且由五人图出版股份有限公司协办。Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the International Academic Symposium on the Human Rights and Power, which is co-hosted by National Taiwan University European Union Law Research Center, Chinesisches Deutsche Kulturzentrum, Memorial Foundation of 2010, European Union Center in Taiwan, Taiwan Association for Financial Criminal Law Studies, and Una Group Incorporated. It is our pleasure to welcome and introduce all our honored guests to you. 在这两个场次中，我们非常荣幸能够邀请到享誉国际的知名学者、教授及专家们参与研讨。以下让我们欢迎已经莅临现场的贵宾及学者。首先，让我们欢迎 Ms. Weistrom, CEO at Swedish Chamber of Commerce Taiwan, 王仁宏教授，国立工程大学政治教授法律学院，廖继斌执行长，财团法人228世界纪念蔡泽海教授，请升任228事件研究小组总执行。曹富山教授，国立台湾大学的主席，驻台北以色列经济文化办事处代表何信东小姐。李亮神父，高中学院学长，陈真如教授，亚金先生 ，Professor Dr. Lucas Liang， 以及我们台大法律学院欧盟法研究中心主任陈志荣教授。我们很荣幸能够邀请到瑞典商会的 CEO Ms. Weistrom 为我们致开幕词。We're very honored to have CEO Ms. Weistrom of Swedish Chamber of Commerce Taiwan to give us opening remarks. 现在先恭请 Ms. Weistrom 为我们说几句话。
Gentlemen, dear students, good morning. Good morning. It's an honor for me to be here today and to give some opening remarks about human rights, and especially from a Swedish point of view. At the first glance, it may be strange to invite me here today as a representative for the Swedish Chamber of Commerce. Well, sometimes we hear that certain countries and governments need to suppress human rights in order to promote business. This should never be allowed to happen. To the contrary, the respect of human rights must encompass all of the society, and it's very much interest of business today. In Sweden, we have a firm belief, based on our own experience, that only an atmosphere of freedom, rule of law, and respect for the rights of others can creative and innovative business prosper. In a modern society like ours, with such a huge part of innovation and new creative solutions and designs, we know that the correlation between human rights and business is a very good base for a good business climate. If we look at it from a historical perspective, we can see that regimes with poor records of human rights tend to be very vulnerable, and the downfall often lead to periods of turbulence and uncertainty. Oppressed people have a tendency to rise, and they will, sooner or later. So in other words, lack of human rights in itself constitutes a risk for business. What do we mean by human rights? Human rights are universal and apply to everyone, meaning that people, regardless of country, culture, religion, ethnic backgrounds, gender, or sexual orientation, they are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Even though human rights set out in the Human Charter are universal, their application and interpretation differ. From a Swedish perspective, let me try to point out a few fundamentals. The rule of law shall apply equally to all in the judiciary, must be independent and grant everyone equal treatment under the law. No person shall be deprived liberty or property without due process. People have the fundamental right of freedom of expression, of assembly to practice their own religion, or not practice at all. People can choose where to work, where to live, and where to travel where they want to. Adults have the right to marry or not to marry. People, regardless of gender or orientation, are entitled to their own sexuality. Penalty applied in criminal cases must be proportionate. The death penalty is a basic violation of human rights and can never, ever, whatsoever be justified. So in today's world, are these self-evident? And do we need to promote them? The Human Rights Convention, ratified by Sweden in 1949, the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. This is an act that came about in Sweden, like in many other countries, in the aftermath of the Second World War, after the revelation of the horrors of the Nazi genocide, the Holocaust. The year that followed saw tremendous achievements in the US with the civil rights movement. In Europe, we saw the birth of stable democracies and firm protection of basic human rights. In Asia and Africa, we saw the end of colonialism. Still, even in Sweden, a country that often pride themselves with a proud history of human rights, like the oldest and most far-reaching freedom of speech and freedom of the Press Act in the world, actually, we have our dark moments. Let me give you a few examples. One is that up until the 1970s, we practiced forced sterilization of people with mental disabilities. Up until the same time, we actually classified homosexuality as a disease. The fall of the communism in Europe and the downfall of authoritarian regimes around the world in the 90s may have appeared to many as the end of authoritarianism and the systematic violation of human rights. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Instead, we saw a new era born of genocides in Africa and on the Balkan, the so-called ethnic cleansing. Just as these terrible acts had come to an end, we saw another new era being born, the terrorist acts. Not only in US, but also in UK, Spain, Indonesia, Turkey, and dozens of other countries. The war on terror has seen the reintroduction of extrajudicial killings, apprehending and imprisoning suspects without due process, torture and large-scale of surveillance and storing of email and phone traffic of citizens in many countries that pride themselves with observing good human rights. In Sweden, the large-scale surveillance of email and on all online activities has become especially controversial. It is interesting to see that laws that were introduced as a way to combat terrorists have actually combat other criminal activities. Some may say this is good, some may say maybe so, but this is not how far-reaching containment of the rights of people was justified when they were introduced. From a chamber perspective, it is also interesting to note that these regulations were opposed by business in the high-tech sector. We live in a world and a time with a debate of human rights and how to protect them in a very dangerous time. And the human rights debate is more relevant than ever. One of the most important liberties in Sweden is the freedom to discuss and debate in the public space through newspapers, TVs, online, and so on. The freedom of press is fundamental. And when we look at it, at the defining and redefining what is in fact human right and how to protect them at home and around the world. With these words, I would like to wish the symposium a very successful morning on this very important topic. Thank you very much.
非常谢谢 Mr. Castro 的开幕词。现在我们即将进入第一场次 Holocaust and Lessons in Human Rights， 请各位专家学者上座。will be a Holocaust and Lessons in Human Rights, and Professor Dr. Wang Ranhong will be our moderator. 现在请王仁宏教授为我们主持本场次的讨论。教授请。
我们今天的主持人，这个还有法学院这个幕后的推动者陈志龙教授，还有几位教授今天的第一场我在前几天才奉命要来主持这个活动所以我心理上觉得说我又不懂这方面的我是教国际经济法的、商事法的，我怎么懂得刑法这方面的事情？但是看到这个题目的时候我觉得蛮有意义的，尤其谈到人权保障的问题。Ladies and gentlemen, especially the symposium's chairman and representative from different country and also specialists. 各位同学、各位老师my colleagues and dear students. A couple days ago, I was heard that I'm going to I'm responsible to the first section seminar symposium of this special days. So I come up from Kaohsiung to Taipei because I just stay in Taipei a couple of days. Most of the time I'm living in Kaohsiung. As I saw I see the topic of this symposium. Actually, I'm not an expert in this area. I'm teaching international economic law and trade law and commercial law. But I look at the topic of this section. I found it's very important, especially in protection of human rights. 我在这个地方要特别的强调的就是，我们这个题目看起来蛮醒目的，但是呢，我们在这个地方牵涉到一个种族的尊重以及人权的保护问题。为什么这个问题那么重要？今天也许大家也看到了，犹太人在世界上遭受到很多不公平的待遇，尤其德国希特勒时代，不是把他们抓到集中营，说是要去洗澡，但是呢，出来的不是水，是瓦斯，把他们的生命都当掉了。不但如此，其他没有被逮捕到的或者被抓到的，那他们就流离失所。这个经验大家在电影里面也看得非常的清楚。但是在另外一方面，我们也看到，在2次大战的时候，日本人在南京大开杀戒，所谓南京屠杀也发生了。在光复的时候，我是高雄人，228事变就在南部嘉义一带开始的。那时候我们看到的是一些穿着草鞋的军队，只听上面的命令，然后就开始从 高雄要塞，一直打到台北，到基隆，跟白中溪的军队从大陆过来会合，一路扫，只要看到一个人就开机枪打死。这样的一个事件，也使我们发现人权在哪里。第二次大战结束的时候，我们知道美国人把一些战犯送到国际刑事法庭加以判决，但是另外一方面，德国的宪法加进去了20条，叫做反抗权，叫 Widerstandsrecht， Widerstandsrecht。那在这个法律里面再加什么？原来苏联跟美国军队一直打德国，打到柏林的时候，军队只剩下一个围墙保护他们。在前一天还圣诞节，他们高兴的庆祝圣诞节，但是第二天他们就准备听上级命令，来打到最后一个人。在这种状况里面，德国人就想到，假使上面的命令是违法的，是违反人性的，那要怎么办？所以在这个时候才发明了所谓反抗权的宪法保障条文。美国人战后要求德国人要制定一部宪法。德国人说，我们东西还没有统一之前，我们不叫宪法，我们叫基本法。为什么叫 Grundgesetz？ 因为在它的第1章里面最重要的讲到人权的保障。这个人权的保障在讲什么？就是讲到了我们人类这个人权是来自于上天的。这个是超国家的一个权利。所以当国家的领导者他有违反人权的做法时候，我们可以不遵守。国家是来自于人民，人民的可以投票表决来决定命运，而不是由一个领导者自己下命令来达成。我们法律人非常重要，要有一些基本观念。我在这边呢，因为时间上受到限制所以大概已经有几排了，所以我只能够介绍这么多。希望第1场的演讲带给各位非常满意的结果。Excuse me, because of the time, I cannot translate very clearly in English, but I mentioned the model of the Jewish people under the Hitler's regime, and also I mentioned the Japanese killing in Nanjing, and also I mentioned during short after the war, the Chinese came over to Taiwan